You may have the best campaign, but that one single trusted voice can completely make or break things. So gone are the days when you need to engage like a specialist marketing analytics firm to get even basic insights. Marketers will need to use AI. You're either very creative or you're very analytical. And if you have to be a successful marketer, you need to know your strength area, but you need to also know when you need to downplay that. There is no better way to understand the customer than being where the customer is. How much you're successful is going to happen based on how well you're going to solve problems for your customers. And trust doesn't get built overnight. It's a long process, especially in this space.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with Indiefolio. Today we have Deepak with us, who is the head of marketing, sales, and commercial operations at Bayer. He's joining us from Singapore, and we're going to unpack his fantastic journey from being an engineer to all the way, leading marketing for a large pharma company. Thanks a lot for your time and welcome to the podcast, Deepak.
Thank you for having me, Kavan.
This has been a long time in the making. I think, the festive season is full throttle. So thank you for, giving me a time on a weekday. I want to first talk about the fantastic journey you've had, right? I think you've moved multiple roles, multiple cities, multiple focus areas over the years, and you've mentioned that your career's something which is always in progress. That's a belief you have. So can you kind of take us back to your time in, I guess, near Chennai when you were learning engineering? How did you become an engineer? And then from there, where you're here, leading commercial and pharma for a large company in Singapore. We'd love to know your insight on career progression.
Sure. No, first of all, don't put me on a pedestal, Kavan. I also admire how your journey has been starting in your, I think, your home office to how you've scaled Indiefolio to where it is. But you really want to dig into my personal story, right? So, yeah, so I mean, I can start from my college days. Honestly, in the late 90s, going to engineering school was not as common as it is today. And in fact, I would reckon that I was quite lucky because I had my applications for my BSc physics ready, and I come from a very, let's say, lower middle class kind of a background, and there was no guarantee that I could get into engineering school, and also I mean we didn't have the resources to do the 2 year coaching and all of that, but I was lucky because at the last moment the exam patterns changed and I could score decent marks to get into the state engineering college in Chennai called Guindy Engineering College. Very fortunate to study there, and I realized that there is so much you can learn from your peers, and a fantastic learning happened during college, and then like a lot of people at that time, I wanted to get into a tech company, and I got into Infosys. Again, at that time, it was a very different thing. That was a time when Infosys used to award stock options, and it was a decent company to get into as well, right? I did that for about 6 years, Kavan. I started in India, and then I was very deep into engineering, right? And from Infosys, through Infosys, I went to the US. I worked with clients in the transportation and logistics space. And once I went and I started working in the client place, I actually started enjoying the client facing aspect. And I started enjoying the dimension of customer success. And that's what drew me to sales. I moved in within the company into a pre-sales and sales kind of a role, and that was when I realized that probably an MBA can be a pivotal change. And then subsequently, my MBA happened, and the consulting happened. I work with ZS, a firm that is very well known for sales and marketing consulting. And consulting without the BS, that's what ZS says, right? So it's very much data-driven marketing. data-driven Salesforce effectiveness, and those are the kinds of work that I did at ZS. And after doing sales and marketing consulting for about 4 years, all for US pharmaceutical companies, the itch was in for me to try and do something in the Indian pharma market. And I started writing proposals to get work. And turns out that proposals don't work, but connections work. And a connection led to a job opportunity at Abbott. And after a fairly good stint at Abbott, I got an opportunity to get a regional role with Bayer. And I'm with Bayer for the last 6.5 years. So it's been an exciting journey. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Deepak, I'll tell you, so many of my friends today, like I'm turning 30 next year. And so many of my friends right now who are doing law or are, into maybe something like finance are kind of bored. They don't really love it too much. And they're so confused here what to do next. It's always a big question in their mind. MBA karu, should I do some internship? Like, because they've not really doubled down on reflecting on what they're very good at. They've realized, okay, I have no clue what my next phase of my career should be. When it comes to you, engineering is very different from sales and then marketing and then commercial and customer success. It's like really complicated. It's not like a very linear path. So what do you say to folks like that, right? What's your heuristic or framework to know when is it the time for me to know this role is not my cup of tea, and what should be the next role I should double down on?
Yeah, no, this is something that I've thought about a lot, and in fact, I have been fortunate to actually sort of shift my career in slightly different directions, right? At the same time, I'm in my 40s, and maybe I can speak from experience. I think the whole idea of pivoting is sort of glamorized a lot more than necessary. And in fact, a lot of times, while from outside a career may look like, oh, one company, 15 years, 20 years, there will be a lot of changes, right? And what I really look at, and I'll go back to like you must have understood, I like physics, right? So what is a pivot? Right? A pivot is, if you really look at it, it's like a fulcrum on which I think something can rotate, right? So,
Load and effort. Yeah.
yeah, and then like a lever, right? Or a hinge in a door. So the door moves and the hinge is the pivot, right? So when you think of any kind of a pivot or a shift in your career, you have to make sure that your fulcrum is very strong, right? So the ones who do it successfully, and this is not only from my experience. I see colleagues and friends having done the switches. They have this really strong core fulcrum, right? Whether that fulcrum is a marketing skill, or whether that fulcrum is, let's say, getting insights which are sort of sometimes hiding in plain sight, and unearthing that insight. You need to have that fulcrum right, and you need to strengthen that fulcrum. And if you have that strong, I think there will be points in time in your career when either a new opportunity comes up where you can transfer your skills from that fulcrum, or there is an interest area for you, and you gravitate towards that interest area. And like for me, right, I was doing consulting for pharma in the US markets, but I wanted to do it in the India market, right? I came with some skills, although I sold myself well. I realized that I had to learn a lot more for the India market, but I came with some skills, and that was a pivot. And the combination of the US market and India market was an essential fulcrum to take me into a Asia Pacific role, because the markets are so diverse. The markets go from reimbursed market style of US to a out of pocket market like India, which is this kind of spectrum that you have in Asia Pacific as a region. So I think having that fulcrum is very important. So if you have the fulcrum right, then you will be able to pivot, and I think the right moments will show up. You will get lucky.
That's like a fantastic analogy. And it's actually a good segue to my next question, because this fulcrum you talk about, right? It's a little confusing to understand that in marketing. often, people assume marketing is like celebrities and advertising and ads and digital ads and performance ads. And then the kind of deeper they go into it, they realize, oh, okay, there's a lot of strategy and numbers and analytics and commercial aspect there. And they're like, oh, there are so many P's in marketing. So if I'm a young person wanting to get into marketing, or if I'm doing a career switch and I'm curious about marketing, can you tell me what's the fulcrum of marketing? Is it more analytical or is it more creative?
Hmm. I think it's both, right? And you've been in marketing, and you know this very well. And um, in fact, one way to look at it is, marketing is, or effective marketing is when data meets imagination, right? People talk about product market fit, and all of those things, right? Essentially, marketing is going to click only when both of these things happen. Right? We've all heard of situations where companies have gone overboard with campaigns, and marketers convince themselves and everybody around them that this is what it is, right? It's campaign, campaign, campaign. But the campaign or a creative is just a spark. Knowing the right market, the right data is actually the fuel, right? So if you have the right creative and the right fuel in terms of the analytical understanding of the market, that is when marketing will really click. So my answer is that marketing is when you can optimize for both the creative side as well as the analytical side.
Yeah, I think you put it well. I feel often your insight comes from your research numbers and strategy, while your idea or a communication plan on that insight actually ends up coming from your creativity. Because I think a lot of people have insights, but how do you really get that through your customer? So as you said, it's like a good merger of both.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. A lot of us have either a strong right brain or a left brain, right? You're either very creative or you're very analytical. And if you have to be a successful marketer, you need to know your strength area, but you need to also know when you need to downplay that and bring your other side up. And that's where you will need to rely on your teams. No marketer is successful as an individual marketer, right? You need to make sure that you have the complementary skills around you to be able to succeed in marketing.
today you're heading marketing for a large cluster, right? For beer, like from Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. And I wanted to know, right, how did you learn marketing? Because often my guests who are CMOs and head of marketings on this podcast are like split. Some of them have, really done an MBA or they've really sharpened their skills through professional education. Some of them have learned it on the go. What was it in your case? And let's say when you are hiring today in your team, is a degree important?
Yeah. So I don't think the marketing degree per se is the most important thing, right? Um, to me, marketing is essentially the ability to really solve problems for customers. If you really go down to the essential part of it, right? And then how you can really make it happen in the most effective manner. That's what companies are trying to do. And there are enough and more examples of highly successful products which have been created by people with no formal marketing degrees, right?
Mm, mm,
The marketing degrees and maybe even good B schools can actually open doors for you. But I mean, and the doors either open at, let's say, at the ground floor or the 10th floor, depending on which school you go to. But then that is only opening the door. How much you're successful is going to happen based on how well you're going to solve problems for your customers.
right.
And that according to me is the key. So I wouldn't index on, let's say, uh, prior degrees or prior marketing experience, but it's more about, do you come with a genuine customer empathy? Do you really believe in solving problems for your customers? I think that's
Correct.
more important.
I think understanding your customer and their problem and what will work, I think, are really important skills, marketer needs to kind of do, because it's their necks are being held to be like, "Ye chalega ki nahi?" At the end of the day, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that that's essentially what I learned from what you said. Now coming to understanding the customer, right? I think the best way to understand a customer is if you are the customer, and living in a certain geography, knowing how, let's say in my case, Bombay works or India works is easy. But when it comes to you, I think you've done everything from like USA to Bihar, UP to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, a lot of aspects, many different cultures, regions, people you've not grown up with, customs you're not a part of, right? So I wanted to ask you, how do you understand a customer if you are not able to relate to them too much? A, and B, um, out of all these markets, which market really has tested your patience the most?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, two parts to your question, right? So, understanding the customer. I think there is no better way to understand the customer than being where the customer is,
Hmm.
right? I learned this through some of my mentors at Abbott. I was told that you don't have a seat in the monthly meeting if you have not spent enough time in the market.
Wow.
How many days? If I mean, there are a lot of armchair marketers in any industry, but how much time are you really spending out in the market, sitting down with the customers, sitting down with your sales colleagues to really understand your customer, and then that is true irrespective of which market you're working for, whether you're working in the US or Bihar or UP or Indonesia or Malaysia or Singapore, anywhere. Um, Most important thing is how much time you're spending in the market, how much time you're trying to understand, and because a lot of times there is a tendency for us to look at the customer from the perspective of our own product.
Hmm.
Let's say I have a great cardiovascular product. All I'm thinking about is my product's features, my product's benefits, and how I can answer all the questions about my product and why it is superior to my competitor and so on. But you forget what the customer is going through in the day-to-day life, and if you invert yourself and see what all problems the customer is facing, and then if you can see how your product can actually solve some of the problems of the customer, you
Hmm.
will be in a much better situation in terms of really solving the customer's problems. And in that process, your product is also getting used, right? So,
Right.
as opposed to looking at a product marketing oriented view, a customer marketing oriented approach is probably a better one. And I'm not preaching theoretically. This is based on a lot of mistakes I've done in my career. I've seen my colleagues do that I've come to the realization that we should look at how we're solving problems for our customers. And to your second question, the market that has been most difficult. I think honestly, the India market is very, very difficult. Not that ASEAN markets are easier, but the level of complexity is at a higher level. And I remember somebody saying that India is a market that will disappoint both the optimists and the pessimists. Right? So it is like that, right? So there will be while you think you've cracked a few things, a few more new issues crop up, right?
Hmm.
So you have to deal with that level of complexity in India. But when you talk about the ASEAN markets, again, every market is culturally different.
Hmm.
Customer orientations are different. Patient orientations are different. So you will really need to understand and tailor. And in a cluster marketing kind of a role, it's a lot about balancing because you're dealing with a lot of limited resources,
Right.
and how do you actually balance limited resources in these markets is a very different level of challenge, which is completely different. But I would rank India as more challenging than some of the other markets I've seen.
Everybody says that customers are kind of the same everywhere. Do you believe that after working with so many geographies, and if so, what is that one thing which is same across all geographies?
Hmm. Hmm. Good question. Yeah, I mean, yes, customers. Yeah, one of the things maybe that stands out, Kavan, is that somewhere or the other, no matter which market you go, right, whether it is US, ASEAN, India, right, customers rely on a little bit of a word of mouth and sort of they trust word of mouth better than campaigns. You may
Hmm.
have the best campaign, but still that one single trusted voice can completely make or break things.
Hmm.
And I've seen that like so many times. We can always go back and say, okay, who is the customer who can advocate for you for your product? Because sometimes you hit that impasse, and the only way you break it is not because you're doing one more campaign, one more viral thing, or a fancy little gimmick. It's that endorsement from another customer, and it seems to work everywhere.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I want to now ask you a question on behalf of maybe entrepreneurs who are starting like young companies, especially let's pick the pharma health domain, right? Um, it's very hard to build a new company there because this whole pharma industry really relies on trust. And if you're serving patients, you are against like big pharma giants, large doctors and hospital chains who may have a certain opinion. Maybe you have something supplementary, complementary to these folks. So if I'm just starting a new healthcare company, let's say, or a pharma company, even if it's an app, they'll be like, who are your past patients, customers? Absolutely nothing, because you're like a dead entity, right? You're making it alive
Yeah.
as a founder in your first year. So can you share some insights on building trust in pharma and healthcare? What do you think is a great way to do this at like a level zero, with like a shoestring to a no string zero budget, versus how it could also look like at scale, how it is probably in your journey leading such large billion-dollar companies?
Yeah, no, this whole thing about trust, especially in pharma healthcare, is sort of like the bedrock, right? Without trust, you're not going to be able to do anything. And in fact, if you go back in history, whether it is American companies or Indian companies, there have been situations where um, the trust of the patient or the trust of the doctors has been compromised, right? And then over a period of time, uh, companies have really put in a lot of effort to make sure that staying honest and being there with doctors and patients over a long run is what is building trust. And um, and then that happens only by showing up day in and day out, authentically, and listening to your customers and making sure that you're there with them. And then if you're starting something new, be prepared for the grind, because this is not going to be like, you cannot do like a flashy campaign or something. You can maybe get some eyeballs, but when it comes to health, when it comes to treatments, people are going to look at somebody who's been there around for a while. So you need to be prepared for the long grind, I would say. And then trust doesn't get built overnight. It's a long process, especially in this space.
Fantastic. Makes sense. I think it all comes down to the customer, is what I think the biggest highlight has been the conversation, and how much
Yeah.
obsession you give over them and care you give over them. Um, I want to now, have you reflected a little bit over your journey as well? I think you've been doing this for 2 decades now, and somebody like you's probably seen everything from you having a lot of offline media taking control, from the advent of TV also coming in from print to TV, then the whole digital internet wave kind of came in, and now we're also in front of us seeing AI
Yeah.
unravel various things. So in your opinion, first I want to ask you, like, what do you think has been generally the most transformational moment for you, a wow moment, an aha moment,
Hmm.
from today till when you started your career?
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I mean, I have to think quite a bit. Um, I think when it comes to wow moments, right? The wow moments have been very intensely human driven, right? I have seen a lot of technology transformation happening in my 20 plus years. And then, in fact, I started myself in tech, so I have a natural inclination and flair for technology. So one, they are human driven, but at the same time, there has been a lot of this fuel by technology. Um, so I can think of like a couple of moments that I felt was quite transformative. One was when COVID hit,
Mhm.
and just before COVID, we were talking about some commercial transformation in my company, and we did some customer understanding, and we found that about 10% of customers, 10 to 15% of customers were open to engaging digitally, right? And I'm talking about the brick and mortar industry like pharma, right? Where doctors want the connection, and they love to see reps waiting outside to meet them and all that, right? So only 10% were willing. But when COVID hit overnight, in a matter of couple of weeks,
Mm.
100% of all sales interactions with doctors moved online.
Mhm.
100%, right? And we went to a point where, in terms of, let's say, Salesforce productivity, we were hitting like 70-80% productivity
Wow.
in virtual engagement. And that was like, wow, this is so transformative, right? And it is also human driven because human
Correct.
beings are seeking connection. It's fueled by technology, but at the same time, it is human driven, right?
Correct.
It's a different story that a few years after COVID, um, face-to-face engagement came back with a vengeance. It's
Mhm.
so high. It's back to like 70-80% of the engagements. But the preferences have also changed. 50% of doctors are willing to engage digitally, but they still prefer in person. But then that moment during COVID was really transformative. Yeah. That was one, and maybe, I mean, you wanted me to talk about one, but I think the other transformative thing I see is the role of micro influencers. Even in, let's say, a very regulated space like pharmaceuticals. Of course, a micro influencer cannot prescribe a product to you, but they can help drive some awareness and help make patients seek doctors and seek the right kind of medical care. And the role played by the small content creators it's also been very, very transformational. And I've seen, I never, I mean, I used to think that you need the big voices to sell. Um, but I think, again, the story has flipped. You need locally relevant voices speaking for you, speaking the right things, to even build awareness around conditions, and making people seek treatments.
Absolutely, absolutely. I fully second, all these transformations you talk about, and I think as time comes, we'll see, how important they become. Talking on transformation, I think one important piece we must chat about is AI. And I mean, we all know it's here to stay. We have to incorporate it. I think month by month, it's just getting insanely, exponentially better and obvious that it's going to be a very, very big part of our lives. Um, I think I'll just stick to, I guess, one focused question, right? Which is about what do you think is underrated about AI and what do you think is overrated about AI? Because there's so much chatter. I'd love to know from a marketing leader, genuinely where do you feel AI is helping you? So, what's the most underrated thing if you'd like to start with that?
Yeah. I think, thinking as a marketer, especially, right? The most underrated thing, what I see is that marketers will need to use AI to find your most relevant audience, to make sure that you are optimizing your market spends, and really fine tune the ROI of your marketing. Because right now you have the data, and you have the large language models interacting with data.
Hmm.
So gone are the days when you need to engage like a specialist marketing analytics firm to get even basic insights. Forget the promotion response modeling. Even to get basic insights, you had to look for dashboards and stuff like that. But right now, there are large language models available where you can interact with the data,
Absolutely.
and you can do a lot of fine tuning of your marketing, and that is highly underrated. Um, and I say this because where we overrate AI is in the area of, let's say, designing the campaigns uh, or creating getting the tone of the campaign right, and relying on AI to get that piece right. I
Mhm.
think we are overrating AI there. I think in those areas we are better off um, using more of the human connection. Yes, you can get ideas, but trying to fine tune your campaign and fine tune the tone of the campaign through AI is is right now overrated. I mean, I may be proved wrong very soon on this front as well, but I feel at this moment at least that piece is overrated.
No, it's music to our ears because we are a network of humans who are design and video experts. And while I think we are using a lot of AI, in fact, we just set up our AI lab at Indiefolio. It's more like a scale tool which helps a creative person do less of the redundant work and open up time to do more creative work, right? And I think there's a lot of resistance from our network here. Indiefolio is launching AI labs. That's so concerning, but they all soon realize that wow, I'm actually just able to outsource all the go to market scale work like brochures and PDFs and whatnot, but I can focus on the main campaign idea which will move the needle. So yeah, couldn't agree more here once again. We're almost at time now, Deepak, so I want to just jump on to the last piece, right? A lot of people are tuning into this podcast who are young, who are maybe in their first earlier stages of their career, right? They're all wanting to be a marketing leader one day. They all want to become a CMO one day. If you could, maybe take yourself back to your first job, your college days, right? What would be an advice you would give yourself now after
Hmm.
having done the grind for, almost 2 decades, over 2 decades?
Yeah, difficult one, right? So I don't know. Honestly, I used to be very hard on myself as a young kid. Of course, growing up in a lower middle class family in India, you really want to push yourself hard. But I think you need to make sure that you enjoy every step. Uh, Make sure that you pause and smell the roses. It's easy to say that, and it's very difficult to follow. But if you're young and you want to be a marketer, things are much better in terms of, let's say, the information that you have, the kind of things that you can learn by yourself. All you need is a mobile phone and an internet connection. So you guys are all fortunate, and but don't be too hard on yourself. That's what I would tell myself, my younger self, and to any budding marketer.
That's beautiful. I think in today's time, there's so much conversation on optimize, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. You don't really reflect back on, you know, how good you are, how lucky you are. Just generally, if you're able to work, if you're able to, do well, study, learn, you're like
Yeah,
already, in a very exclusive community, and you should just start with a lot of, gratefulness towards everything. So thank you so much, Deepak. This has been an
my
amazing
pleasure, Kavan.
conversation. I loved how articulate you were, and for and I hope you had a good time as well, Deepak.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. You did have a few trick questions, but all good, all good.
Always, always. Thank you so much. And for everybody who's tuned in so far, if you'd like another marketing leader, please like, share, and subscribe. A new episode will come out very soon.